Title: The Plagiarism and Chronological Errors in Eureka, an Exposition of the Apocalypse. Dr. John Thomas's Eureka, an Exposition of the Apocalypse, commonly called Eureka, is a 3-volume work that serves as a commentary on the Book of Revelation. Eureka is often regarded as a significant work in Christadelphian eschatology, yet it is riddled with major flaws. Not only does it contain numerous false prophecies, but it also heavily borrows from Horæ Apocalypticæ, a work by Edward Bishop Elliott. Additionally, one of its most glaring issues is the removal of Chronikon Hebraikon, a document that exposes Dr. Thomas's deeply flawed chronology. This appendix, once included in Eureka, was later omitted from many copies, likely due to the failure of his predictions. Plagiarism from Horæ Apocalypticæ. One of the biggest issues with Eureka is that it is not entirely original. Dr. Thomas drew extensively from Horæ Apocalypticæ, a well-known commentary on the Book of Revelation. While Dr. Thomas attempted to present Eureka as his own independent interpretation, the influence of Elliott's work is undeniable. Many of the interpretations, structural elements, and even phrasing can be traced back to Horæ Apocalypticæ, making Eureka more of a rehashed version than a groundbreaking theological work. Elliott's Horæ Apocalypticæ was widely respected in 19th century Protestant eschatology. It analyzed biblical prophecy through a historicist lens, seeing history as an unfolding of biblical predictions. Dr. Thomas adopted many of these views, but tailored them to fit his own Christadelphian framework. Instead of acknowledging his debt to Elliott's work, he presented his findings as original insights, which raises serious ethical concerns about the credibility of Eureka. The problematic Chronikon Hebraikon. Perhaps the most embarrassing element of Eureka was Chronikon Hebraikon, a document in which Dr. Thomas attempted to establish a precise chronology of biblical events. This appendix, originally attached to Eureka, contained his calculations predicting that Jesus would return in 1870, and that the kingdom of God would be fully established 40 years later, by 1910. Dr. Thomas believed that by carefully analyzing biblical and historical timelines, he could pinpoint the fulfillment of end-time prophecies. However, his calculations were completely erroneous. Jesus did not return in 1870, nor was the kingdom of God set up by 1910. These failed predictions demonstrated that his entire chronological framework was built on faulty assumptions. Because of these glaring inaccuracies, Chronikon Hebraikon was quietly removed from most later editions of Eureka. The removal suggests that even Christadelphian editors recognized the problems with Dr. Thomas's predictions and sought to distance Eureka from his failed chronology. However, this act of erasing his errors does not undo the fact that Eureka was built upon a deeply flawed foundation. The consequences of false prophecy. Dr. Thomas's failed predictions undermine the credibility of Eureka as a reliable guide to biblical prophecy. The Bible warns against false prophets, stating in Deuteronomy 18:22, "When a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the thing does not happen or come to pass, that is the thing which the Lord has not spoken. The prophet has spoken it presumptuously. You shall not be afraid of him." By this biblical standard, Dr. Thomas's prophetic claims were false. His belief that Jesus would return in 1870 was not merely an intellectual mistake, but a failed prophecy that calls into question the legitimacy of his entire interpretative method. The removal of Chronikon Hebraikon from Eureka does not erase the fact that he misled his followers with a flawed eschatology. Conclusion. Eureka is not the divinely inspired work that some of its adherents claim it to be. It plagiarized heavily from Horæ Apocalypticæ, and its core chronological framework, outlined in Chronikon Hebraikon, was completely incorrect. The removal of Chronikon Hebraikon from later editions of Eureka is an implicit admission that Dr. Thomas's predictions were unreliable. The failure of Dr. Thomas's eschatological system serves as a cautionary tale against placing faith in human calculations of prophetic events. Instead of relying on speculative timelines, it is more important to focus on the principles of faith, righteousness, and the expectation of the resurrection in God's appointed time. No words or paragraphs were removed, only punctuation was corrected for clarity and readability.